Hey everyone, welcome back to Healing in Nature Stories. The space is where we share real, raw, and inspiring stories of people who found their way back to themselves through nature. And today I am so honored to have Jenny here with me. She's joining me to share her own story. Jenny is a lifelong nature lover who has turned that passion into purpose. Inspired by her work with trauma impacted population, Jenny combines the professional and personal aspects to guide participants on nature immersions. Um, those nature immersions are both nurture their soul and heal them from the inside out. Jenny is also a photographer capturing the magic of nature with her lens while combining images with poetry. Jenny works with several nature and environmental groups. She holds nonprofit leadership roles and shuttles around her budding musician son. So, hi, Jenny.
Hi, Clara. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Of course, so excited. Um, so let me ask you, let's start with this question. If you can pinpoint like a one moment in your life where you kind of have a shift in your being or a mindset shift that kind of like sparked this whole passion of yours, what would that be?
Yeah, so I can think of a moment in my adulthood, but I know that it all goes back to my childhood and it was just part of our life. Like we lived in a suburban subdivision, but there was a wooded area in the back of the subdivision, and so we were just out there all the time. So being in nature was just what we did. We rode our bikes on the paths, we got lost on the trails, we swam in creeks that we probably shouldn't have and got like all sorts of weird rashes from it and whatnot. But then as I kind of got older, I'm from Ohio, moved out into Chicago, was in Chicago for a while. And I think that the connection to nature kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit. But then I live where I am now. And when I started picking up running, and actually it was more, I was running and then had my son and then got back into running. I hated being on the treadmill.
Mm.
So I had to be outside. And I started running in a preserve that was close to me. And then I started running in different kinds of preserves and like just figuring out all of this stuff. And then it was just one day that I was out there running or walking in what I call my home preserve, my favorite little preserve, and something just struck me. And, being a nonprofit leader, I donate to other nonprofits because that's one of my values and it's important to me. And I'm out there and I'm like feeling so fulfilled and so like good being there that I just had this moment of like, why is this not what I'm contributing to? Like I wasn't involved heavily in any kind of environmental or nature-based nonprofits. I wasn't donating to any of them. And I was like, why am I not doing this? Like I feel the way I feel here. Why is this not what I'm supporting? And that was like the moment, that was that shift in that moment.
Mm. Oh wow, I love it. It, it's kind of like you were growing in this nature and it was always surrounding you, but there's this just one moment that kind of landed for you and really allowed you to see this as something that is more important than just the background.
Yeah. I mean, it was where I went when I needed to feel better.
Mm.
And so I thought, why am I not doing more about this?
Hmm. So you were not doing anything nature related. How was the transition? What did you do to transition and support nature more?
So I think it started like I've always done gardening in my backyard and did a vegetable garden and was doing some landscaping, but that was more like on the surface level. That wasn't really like a deep connection to nature type of thing. So at one point, quite frankly, I got tired of watering the vegetable garden because it's hard to keep up with. And I thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to turn this into like a pollinator garden. And I don't really know where I got that idea from. So I quickly searched up like what are plants that pollinators might like. And I figured out some plants I already had in the yard. So I, in the fall moved plants around, got rid of all the vegetables, started moving plants into those vegetable garden plots that would be just for pollinators. And so as I started going down that rabbit hole is when I found the native plants, which I call sort of like the gateway drug to to
Mm.
nature conservation. Because once you learn about native plants, like you're gone, like you're down the rabbit hole, you're in there. And so I started learning about native plants and realized that there was a native plant sale that happened in my town, and it's put on by the Nature Foundation of Will County, which I didn't know anything about before. And the Nature Foundation of Will County is like the nonprofit part of our local forest preserve district. Like they raise money through the nonprofit to support that. So I was like, oh, and so I went there, and I think it was COVID, because it was right before that I was like, I'm going to do this. So I think it was COVID year. I made my first order. I ordered 45 native plants, and I dug up like whole sections of my yard where we had planted this grass that we thought was pretty, but it was spreading and it was taking everything over. So I spent a couple weeks digging out all of this grass and replacing it with these native plants. And so then it just sort of started from there. Like, and then we've always had a membership to our arboretum. And then I realized our arboretum has classes you can take. So they have a natural areas conservation training course. And so I said, well, I'm going to start taking these classes. And so I started taking these classes. Somewhere in the mix, forest therapy came up. Don't know why. I think it might have been like a post on Facebook where I was like, that sounds interesting. I'm going to think about that. And so I just started like thinking about it. And I think I found ANFT, and I just got the emails, and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. And so I just feel like I've been collecting experiences
Mm.
for the last 5 years to start to try to like stitch something together, which I'm still not entirely sure what that something is.
Mm.
But it sort of started there. And the further I go down and the more I do, the more I want to do.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. It's the calls of nature that keeps like calling you and piecing it all together as a puzzle, and even not knowing what it looks like, but how you said like going down the rabbit hole, but it's like a good rabbit hole because you're just like
Yeah.
driven by this passion. Hmm.
Yeah. And there's like birds in there. And then at some point, the photography came in. So, like, none of it was a straight line. Like, it was just things that kept like coming in, but they were all kind of related to this one center, you know?
Hmm. Now I'm curious for me to ask is when you're on this path of kind of like taking in different messages, how do you know their messages are for you and some that are not? How do you choose to follow through with one thing and not follow up with another?
Hmm. I'm going to think on that for a little bit and try to figure out
Yeah.
how to answer. Um, I'm not sure that I know. I feel like this nature path has been largely intuitive,
Hmm.
and not really logical. And not
Hmm.
saying that in a bad way. But it's really just been because when I started doing some of this, it really was to fulfill me. So, like during COVID, I remember when everything started to shut down, I remember feeling a little bit of relief that running outside and being out in nature was something that was important to me, because that wasn't something that was being taken away from me
Hmm.
during COVID. Like I could still go outside. I could still go into a preserve. I could still do the things that I wanted to do. And so I feel like I've always just been following. Like I didn't have to do it for income. I didn't have to do it for any reason other than me. So I was
Hmm.
able to just follow my intuition on what I felt pulled towards, because there wasn't anything like substantial that I had to do. There wasn't like, I have to turn this into a moneymaker. I have to do this for my employer. There wasn't
Hmm.
any specific end goal. So I was able to just like, can I fit this into my schedule? Was probably the only thing that I had to worry about. And is it making me feel good? And if it
Mm,
wasn't making me feel good, that's probably the indicator, right? Like if it wasn't making me feel good, then I
mm.
wasn't going to be doing it.
Yeah, I love it. I think the intuition is such a it's an interesting topic. I feel like because it's in a way the way I feel the way that we trained and live by sometimes take away our intuition and it replaces it with the things we have to be doing and we
Yeah.
forget to follow that. So I think that's very beautiful. Um,
I
said.
think that at some point along the line, doing everything that I was supposed to do, I forgot myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
So then going sort of backwards and being back in nature again, some of it out of necessity, but I think it was a process of rediscovery, which I didn't realize was happening at the time.
Mm,
But I only realized that now looking back. And there's all these little indicators, like with the photography piece. I wanted to be a photographer when I was in middle school. I used to want to be a photographer for National Geographic. Like I remember on like career day, they used to have a career day where you would shadow somebody. I shadowed a photographer when I was 14 years old. And then it all just like was gone. Like it just, for whatever reason, like that. Like I used to be in art class. Like in 8th grade, my school had issues affording art. So you could only be in this art class if you really wanted to do it and signed up for it. And I did that. And I always loved to do art. And then I ended up having a class in a different high school where those people were like, they wanted to do art as a career, right? I just like to do it because I like to do it. And I was getting pushed and pulled in ways that didn't feel right to me. And I stopped doing all sorts of art. Like from that point forward, I didn't do anything artsy, like at all. So I just like, and we're just reflecting on there are things that were part of me that for one reason or another went away. And I feel like over the past 5 years, they've slowly been allowed to come back and become part of my life again. And for so long, I didn't realize that I had lost those things.
mm, mm. Yeah, very interesting that you said you were kind of pulled towards a specific direction when you were younger, and then it kind of like the definition or the availability or whatever we assign to this was not fitting you at that time, so you kind of let it go. And then you said you forgot yourself, we kind of lost yourself, and then it stripped you away from everything and allowed you to take in the things from a new perspective. Sounds to me like.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something about being in nature and the quieting that happens when you're there
Mm,
that lets other things back in. There's so much kind of noise in the regular world and all different kinds of noise. I'm not talking about like auditory, but there's just clutter everywhere and things that you have to do and you're pulled in this direction or that direction and there's just all of this like noise and static around you all the time. And when you're in nature, that falls away from you and then you are left with yourself, which can be pretty damn scary, which is why people struggle going on a forest therapy walk and you ask them to sit with a tree for 20 minutes. They're like, what are you talking about?
yeah.
How can I be quiet for 20 minutes? Because you're left just with you.
Mm.
and whether or not you can, and for me, like it allowed, like some of it was running, like running in nature just allowed this free flow of thought and experiences, and then picking up the camera in nature provided for this ability or this necessity of observation, of like deep observation, right? Close observation. And again, that's why I call it like a collection of experiences that just all kind of stitch together. And I feel like the forest therapy is kind of like the culmination of all of those different things that I felt called to. I think I looked into forest therapy for probably 3 years before I decided to actually do it, because I was like, oh, this looks interesting. I wonder if I could do that. And then for a while there, and then I remember one time I opened up the application and I was like, okay, could I even like qualify, right? Do I
Hmm.
have the qualifications to
Hmm.
even be able to do this? And like I read through the application, I was like, I think I could do this. I think I would qualify. I have X, Y, and Z in my background. That seems like that would work. And then I walked away from it again. So I
Yeah.
kept just kind of going back and forth to it before I said, okay, I'm gonna sign up for
Hmm.
this. Like I've got money saved. I think I can afford to do this. Like I think I'm gonna go ahead and do this. And I was having like a sort of like a crisis of like, do I really want to do the work I'm doing forever? Do I want to keep being in a leadership, the type of leadership role that I'm in? It was COVID. I fell into a really deep depression, probably like 2021, 22. Ended up having to take a sabbatical from work. Really was feeling like I wasn't acting out of my values. I was acting in ways that didn't match what I valued within the workplace. Um, so there was just a lot of soul searching and a lot of having to figure out who I am, who I thought I was, who I want to be. Am I in the places that are letting me do that or not? So I just kept taking in all of these different nature things and feeling like I want to be something around nature. Like nature needs to be some kind of, I even applied for like jobs at places, and people are like, why do you want this job? You're like, you're the CEO of this other place over here. Why would you want this other job that's not that? And I'm like, because I want to be close to this thing. And I don't feel like I need to be in this high leadership role to accomplish what I want to be in my life anymore.
Yeah. That's highlights so much just what you said right now. This is the society of how, I want to do this like simple thing, but like, wait a minute, but don't you want to be high up here and have this like huge goals and achieve and be on this role and be paid all this amount of money? Like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
It actually does bring me to this another thought, and I wonder how was your experience with the people around you, close people, maybe at work, like you are shifting, you are changing, you're trying all these things. How did people around you react to your change?
Um, yeah, I think there are people who probably still today think I've lost my mind a little bit. Some people were very supportive. I had some supportive people who have that belief of like, you should follow your passion, you should find what kind of makes you click and go toward that thing. But I did definitely have some people, at work, it was kind of hard. I mean, because I literally said, okay, I'm doing this training and it's, 2 hours every Friday for the next 6 months. So I'm not going to work in the middle of the day. Every Friday for the next 6 months, there's going to be this 2 or 3 hours just letting you guys know where I'm not going to be available. And everyone's like, okay. um, I think a lot of people thought it was just kind of a phase, maybe,
Uh,
okay, we'll let you do this, floofy thing. Like people don't take it seriously, I
Mm.
suppose, right? Like, what are you talking about? Forest therapy guide. What are you like? What is that? What does that even like mean? You know,
Mm.
and it's still like that. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out. Like, I am leaving my job, and I'm terrified. Like, I'm excited and terrified at the same time, but I made that choice to leave the job that I have, and in big part because I have one child who was entered at high school, and so I have 4 years, and then he's going to be off doing what he's doing. So there's a lot of support I want to be able to provide him, and also like it's just not serving me anymore. Like I said, it's not that I don't want to be in leadership roles because that is who I am. I just would like to lead in different ways.
Mm.
And one of the things that I learned becoming a forest therapy guide was how much I missed working directly with people. Like when I started in my career, I started in like prevention, education, and community outreach. So this is, domestic violence prevention. And so I always was working with people. I was doing, facilitating workshops, trainings, groups with kids. Like it was always talking with people. So not like direct service, like counseling or anything, but working directly with people in a very facilitator like role. And as a leader of an organization, you just don't get to do that. The things that you have to do are different. And when I started doing the forest therapy, I was like, man, I really missed working with people so much more than I thought I did. So that just everything that I've taken in more and more pulled me away from the job that I had and toward something different. And I'm old enough that if I don't do it now, I could miss the window,
Mm.
you know? And I've been watching a lot of people around me get to the point of retirement and either they get sick shortly thereafter, can't do the things that they want to do anymore. Some of them pass away. Some of them, it happens to their spouses. Their spouses get sick or their spouses have passed away. And I'm like, I don't want to wait, you know,
Mm.
until retirement to do the things that I want to do and I feel like I need to do.
Mm.
I keep throwing a lot at you, Clara. So
No, I like it, it makes me it makes me like bummed because I hear you giving yourself so much like permission to just be in the moment and follow that desire or purpose that you've been on for a couple of years. And I just think this is something that a lot of us need more of. Like even though, you said you're scared of doing the things, but you were trusting. And I think this nature way of being and connecting more to nature allows us to to be more simple and allow us to trust that things gonna work out. And I think you're on that journey, and it's great that you're realizing it. It's like, hey, I don't want to wait because maybe something will happen. I'm going to be living today, right now, and doing the best because tomorrow is not guaranteed. And
right.
I think I'm coming from the medical field, so I've been always seeing sick people. And I feel like I always had this thought of like, oh my gosh, I have to be leaving, but I've never really done that until like recently too, probably like you around the 5, 6 years. I think we all have this shift during after in the middle of COVID, things happened. And but coming from a place of, maybe haven't seen all that all the time in front of you, but still taking that stand of be like, no, I'm just gonna do what I want and just live my life. And so spend time with my kid because then he's gonna leave and I'm not gonna see him gonna go travel the world or whatever. I think it's a beautiful thing. So then you live in a way that if we to die today, we don't have any regrets because we leave it the way that we wanted to leave. Um, yeah. So you mentioned that you've been working with the like people who've been through trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Have you is this kind of you combining this as well with the nature? Do you bring nature to this, or you don't combine them right now? Like, what?
So, my professional path has always been with gender-based violence.
Mm,
So I've always been working with domestic violence, sexual assault, child sexual abuse are
mm,
the themes. And like I said, the further you get into leadership roles, the more you get away from working directly with people. So what that path took me towards was really towards trauma informed care in terms of how to incorporate that into the work that I've been doing. So I had brought trainings in and really worked to transform organizational culture in the past few organizations I've been in, so that my staff who do work, directly with clients, participants, customers, whatever wording you want to be, are able to do that work through a trauma lens. So I've sort of developed more of an expertise in trauma informed organizational work. Like, how can you teach people to be trauma informed, and what does it mean to actually be a trauma informed organization? Because you can't expect your staff to be able to be trauma informed for a client if they're not being also treated with a trauma informed lens, right? Because we all go through
mm,
trauma. Like, everybody goes through trauma. You know,
yeah.
I used to ask, raise your hand if you've had this traumatic event. But now that we've all been through COVID, we've all been through a global collective traumatic event. So I don't ask people that anymore. I just remind them, by the way, COVID pandemic was a traumatic event for you, right? Like, you thought you might get sick and die just by going to the grocery store.
Mm,
You had to be isolated from the people that you loved and the things that you loved doing. Like, that, these are all traumatic losses that people have had. And so my expertise has really become into, how do you run an organization in such a way that you're recognizing the humanity and the impact of the whole life of your staff, right? So that they then can do the best work that they need to do. And what I realized is that I went through my own trauma. Like, trying to run a nonprofit organization in the midst of COVID was like the hardest professional challenge I've ever had.
mm,
We had to keep all of our workers safe. We had to figure out how to keep, because domestic violence doesn't stop during COVID. And as a matter of fact, it got worse because
yeah.
people couldn't leave the house where they were being harmed to come and get services. So it created a whole piece of other challenges. Um, and then I had my child at home at the same time, who was in third grade when it started, all of fourth grade. So I had to try to run this organization and support my child who had ADHD, who did not function through Zoom classes at all, like daily breakdowns, trying to figure this all out. Um, so I realize, having been stepped back from it for a number of years, it's no wonder I say I lost my mind, which I understand from a mental health perspective. We're not necessarily supposed to say that. But I mean, I felt like I was losing my mind. Like, I was falling apart in front of people all the time. Like, I literally was not able to cope anymore. And now I've forgotten the question that you've asked, but the trauma piece. So that's what getting to a point where it was so clear to me that I was having my own traumatic experiences. But because I was the leader of the organization, there was no one who could respond to me in a
Mm,
trauma informed way, because I'm expected to respond to everyone else, right? No one's expected to respond to me,
yeah. Huh.
which is a whole other conversation about leadership for another day. Um, and that's when I went to the forest all the time. I went to the forest all the time. I picked up the camera. I took it out there. Like, I tried to get out there as much as I possibly could, because that was the only place that I ever felt okay.
Mm,
That ever felt okay was when I was in the forest. And that's what drove me to actually do the forest therapy training, was that connection to trauma and understanding and having experience, and how much nature can help heal the traumatic experience, because we don't often put our traumatic experiences into words.
mm.
Like, not everybody can talk about it. You feel it, it's in your body,
Yeah.
and so much of the forest therapy we do is sensory based.
Mm.
Like, every time I read about it and learned more about it, I was like, this is trauma informed care.
Yeah.
Like, everything about this is trauma informed care. And it's what worked for me. Like, I had a therapist, it was in my treatment plan that you have to be in nature, was part of, and still is part of my treatment plan with my therapist. And that's really what drove me to actually take the step to do it.
Mm. Yeah. Also, when you talk about it, is that when people expose to nature, there is, how you said we can't really say it in words, but nature allows the space to it to be whatever it needs to be. And even with forest therapy, if we kind of like strain it into that, is that people can show up and be whatever they need to be and they don't have to say it, and how everybody experiences
Mm-hmm.
the things differently. And it's so beautiful. And for you to be in a leadership role and bringing it down to the people, right, from your experience, not coming from a place of like, oh, I know it all and I'm so this and that, but kind of like, hey, I've been through this and I want to share this experience so we can all like be better for ourselves and each other, and we can serve the community better. That's such a, I think it's very powerful place to be. Mm. What would you say have changed in you and around you, like the changes that you can see or feel since the past, since you've been on this journey for this couple years?
Slowing down. I'm a lot slower of a person than I used to be.
Hmm.
Like, I relish just being able to be somewhere for a while. Like, I wake up in the morning and I feel the best if I can wake up and be alone for 3 hours by myself in the morning. And I never used to do that. Like, I would just get up and go. And now, like, my best days are the days where I can just wake up and it's decent weather, go in my backyard, sit in my sit spot, and just like be there. Like, I walk slower. I just feel like I do everything slower, and like I'm always observing or taking in everything that's around me all the time. Like, I'm constantly, reminding everyone, look at the moon. The moon is beautiful. Go outside and notice the moon. Or like, hey, here's this sunset. You've seen my sunset pictures because I love to take pictures of the sunset. So I'm always just like, hey, if you didn't notice the sunset here, you have to. A lot of my photography, I share it with people just because I'm like, I think you need to see this beautiful thing. I
Mm.
don't know if you've noticed any beauty around you today. So here's some beauty for you to like, I see beauty everywhere, like
Mm.
everywhere all the time. Like, I just,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't feel a need to rush anymore. I don't feel a need to get like all, worked up about a lot of things, and really trying to like trust myself and trust, I call it the universe. People call, whatever that overwhelming, overarching being is for them. Everybody has different words for it. But for me, it has really allowed me to lean into that, I think, a little bit more than I had been before, and to keep myself open. Like, when we went to the immersion that we were at, I don't have words to describe what that experience was for me. I don't know what it was like for all the other 20 some people that were there with us. I have had a couple of experiences in my life where, you hear people and they're just like, oh, this was completely life changing. And I used to always be like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't know. I didn't give that a whole lot of salt. And I have now had a few experiences in my life. And that was one of them, where like life changing, completely. transformational. And the only way I can describe it is that I feel like I was broken open
Mm.
during those 4 days. And I have remained wide open ever since then. And really, I'm trying to allow myself to go wherever that's taking me,
Mm.
which is exciting and terrifying.
And makes you feel alive.
And it makes me feel alive. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Love it. So, so beautiful that you get to experiences like that, that putting an impact on you the way it did, and shaping all your decisions as well, and allowing you to be who you are. Um, and now you're like even leaving your job as a guide, we opening the doors for the people to get in and immerse in nature. What have you noticed in people when you are opening the doors for them? What transformation have you experienced?
Yeah. So that is always cool. So, as you know, as guides, we have to get in this place with no expectations, which was really hard for me in the beginning. I think I'm pretty decent at it now, but every now and then it creeps back in. I always notice that people feel calmer. Like even after, the very first sort of invitation that we take them through, pleasures of presence, everyone feels better after pleasures of presence. Like I sometimes feel like if that's all I can give someone for the day, then I've done it, because everyone just feels so much better after that. People talk a lot about like feeling centered, feeling the stress go away. I see them connect to the other people on the walk, which is really cool. Like most of them don't expect that at all, but we'll have like little groups and like by the end they're like friends, after 2 hours with these people, like they connect with them in a completely different way. Many of them are very open in the sharing, which is really lovely. I've had some of them reflect on things that they say they've been avoiding, but
Mm.
then, like, through the invitations, it's amazing sometimes how an invitation can hit someone exactly perfect. And of course, we have no idea that's going to happen when we when we decide, that we're going to have someone do something. I think the last one I had, I think that I invited people because it's fall. So this was like last weekend. I invited people to notice how the land is letting go and if maybe there was something in them that wanted to let
Mm.
go. And there was one person who at the end like sat down and was really just talking about like this thing that they knew they needed to let go of and they've kind of been avoiding it, and how it just kind of helped them bring that up again and
Mm.
really try to commit to actually doing that. I had one person who, and again, like we have no way of knowing this is going to happen, um had lost her grandmother not too long before the walk, and I think was having a little bit of a struggle because I got the sense that they butted heads sometimes. Like it wasn't always like the best relationship, but she described her grandmother literally as like a tree hugger. She was like, she would literally get out and she would hug trees and whatever. And so we went
Mm.
through the walk, and, the last invitation of the walk was to greet trees, in whatever way feels right to you. And just through that whole process, like she came back and described at the end of the sharing that she really felt like she healed this relationship with her grandmother because she had spent all this time doing something that was so much the spirit of who her grandmother was. And she like hugged me at the end of the walk and she's like crying, and like we would never know, we would never know that that's going to happen. It obviously never have the expectation that that's going to happen, but it's like incredible to see
Mm.
how being in nature means so many different things to people. And sometimes it's as simple as they just finally had a chance to calm down, or as profound as working through a grief and loss experience.
Mm. Ah, I that's so so powerful. like the experiences that people can have in this um non-judgmental and non-conventional way. Like I was, as you were talking, I was seeing like a therapist that sits in a room with people, and I was like just seeing you walking with the people outside and the trees around, and like a sensory visceral thing that you can actually touch the tree and you can have
Mhm.
this connection. It also makes it so normal. It normalizes, I feel, the experience of the human body, and that we are out there feeling things but deal with them in so many different ways. So it just opens up this whole
Yeah.
mm,
Well, and that's what I love about it is because everybody works through their stuff in a different kind of way. You know, we all have stuff, but we don't all work through it the same way. And so, I mean, obviously, I'm a huge believer in traditional talk therapy. I have a therapist, you know, as working in a domestic violence agency, we have counselors, you know, I have a strong belief in it, but I also am very aware that it just isn't what works the best for everyone, or it alone maybe
mm-hmm,
isn't, you know, like I said, I have a therapist, but I also have to go be in nature. You know, like it has to be in combination for me to continue to manage my depression. I can't just do one or the other. I have to have a combination of things. And what I've learned, you know, in with trauma is that often we can't get trauma out in words because it doesn't store in our brain as
mm,
words necessarily. Like when you have these very strong experiences, but it can be stored in the body. So there's this book, and it's called "The Body Keeps the Score" by
mm,
Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and it took me, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years to actually read the book because every time I opened it up to read it, within the first chapter, I kept getting triggered. And so I kept having to close the book and I
oh,
finally got through it. But it's this absolutely amazing book that literally talks about how trauma is stored in the body. And, you know,
mm,
like coming from the medical field, like different illnesses and different ways that that presents, you know, in the medical field when it's trauma related. And it's just absolutely amazing. But there's a piece in there that's throughout is that some people like can't talk about it. They've, you know, that's why you have art therapy, which is very well accepted, but that's
mm,
another way where people can work through their trauma without having to use words, or movement therapy, dance therapy. You hear people talking about like music therapy or equine therapy. Like, I mean, forest therapy shouldn't feel that outside, I think, for people because all of these other things have become more accepted. So we're just, you know, trudging along the line like, hey, we're here too. Um, because we've recognized that it doesn't work for everyone to sit and talk about it. Like people have to find their port of entry, you know,
mm,
into working through their trauma. And for some people, that's just being able to be in nature or even just being able to learn how to be still,
mm,
which is right. Part of the reason why forest therapy started, we learned is like, just stop
mm,
and be okay with being still.
yeah.
Be okay with recognizing what your body is feeling. And it's pretty common for people who've experienced trauma, especially with maybe some particular types of trauma, to disconnect from their body as a way to keep themselves safe, as a defensive mechanism. So being able to get back in touch, even with those sensory experiences, is hugely important. And that's what forest therapy does. It's, you know, I love the fact that, you know, they call it the bodyful instead of mindful. It's bodyful and it's all
Mm,
sensory based because that's very different. That accesses very different parts of you than the cognitive, you know, talk therapy, thinking through
yeah.
parts of things. Like you said, like you have to touch it. Like the woman who shared the story with me, she could have And now this is all conjecture. I don't know this, but let's pretend like she could have talked about the loss with her grandmother in all kinds of certain ways. But the act of hugging a tree and connecting with the tree the way her grandmother did and sort of embodying that sensory experience is a
Mm,
really different kind of way of healing than talking about it.
mm. Yeah, 100%. There is this thing about forest therapy that I also really like that I think it's a bit different from any other therapy is that there's the emphasis on not just taking care of us, but also how we can do better with the planet and nature. And I think in this there's also something kind of bigger than ourselves. There's not just us. So I'm curious, have you changed anything around you that can benefit the nature more?
Yeah, so I think that I started benefiting nature more and then getting into forest therapy. So, like I
Mm.
said, when you start down the rabbit hole of native plants, you're like straight up into conservation from there. Because you learn so much about the importance of native plants. Why is it a native plant? What does it do to conserve the land around you? How it nourishes beneficial insects and the native pollinators that are there for you, how it's made for the soil that you're on and the temperature, that you're in. So I started down that line the same time that I started taking this natural areas conservation training course, and learning about invasive species and how to remove invasive species and why they're so detrimental to the environment and how we ended up getting them. And then for some reason, it doesn't matter what all the feminist education was that I had, it was learning about invasive species and native plants that finally made colonization click in my head. I don't know why that's what it was. After everything that I've learned, I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm sort of like, this was my entryway to be like, oh, damn colonialism. I get it, because that's one of the things that happened. Like all of these plants were brought over by the
Mm,
colonists from Europe, and they've completely destroyed our ecosystem because they're not supposed to be here. And they outcompete all of the plants that are native that are supposed to be here and that support the species that we have and support our planet. So I'm on the board now for the Nature Foundation of Will County that I had mentioned, which was one of my like, oh, they have native plants. So now I'm the board chair of that board, and I've been for the last couple of years. I'm on our local conservation and sustainability committee for the village that I live in. We're just advisory, but we've been talking a lot about trees
mm,
and the parkway trees and the parkway tree program and the kinds of trees that the village plants and whatnot. And so the village is now on a journey of no longer planting certain trees that have been deemed as invasive trees. They're got some grant money and they're looking at replacing like 2,500 trees over the
wow.
next 5 years, and starting to pull out more of those invasive trees and like doing a lot more things with native plants and like supporting the environment. And so, yeah, I've definitely have like started along that train, and the forest therapy only makes it better because I agree. It's like once you feel connected to the land, which I think was my experience, not that I wasn't always pro environmental, but it's completely different. Like once you have this tree, right, that's your tree. Like I have people, I do this greeting trees mostly. And when people come back and talk about it, they say my tree. Like, you know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
talk about the tree as a being in a way that they did not when they
Mm,
came into it. And I've had people say, well, I'm going to come back and visit my tree again. And they
wow.
have, like, and they have gone and done that because they connected so strongly with this tree or with this experience that they want it to survive. They want everything to be healthy. And that's the other profound sort of part of it is like, this is a temporary unless we do something about it.
Mm, yeah. Ah, that's so great. Oh my gosh, it's just like a bomb. It's just
I
like a
feel like
good
that's
bomb.
been my life, Clara. I swear. Like, especially since the emergent, I do. Like, I just was like a bomb went off inside of me. I started writing poetry. I was like, where did that even come from?
That's amazing.
I was like, I just, yeah, that's all I can say is that it broke me open like a geode, like there's a rock on the outside and you cut
Oh,
it open and there's all these like cool little crystals and whatnot on the inside that you didn't know were there.
mm. Ah, I love it. That's so beautiful. What I see in my mind is like you like a little flower and you were the seed in the ground and then slowly things start happening to you and the good and the bad, but you start like emerging and now you're like just this like woo.
Right? Notice me,
Yeah.
notice me. Let me do
No, but
something for you.
yeah, it's just this like now you're like sending your seeds. Like before you were just one seed, but now as you grown and you got watered with all the things, now you have your own seed that you're planting in
Yeah,
people.
figuratively and literally, because I actually harvest native seeds from my yard and give them to people.
Really? How cool. Do you do that for your
Yeah.
walks? Would you do it to people in a
You know
walk?
what? I just was thinking that I should do it on my next walk. I haven't given out seed packets on walks before, but I have a walk coming up at the end of the month and I was like, "You know what? I should give them some seeds."
What a great idea.
Yeah.
That sounds really nice.
Yeah.
Like a circle, kind of like here, just a little bit. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that.
Wonderful. I love it. Oh my gosh. All right, Jenny, before we close, I want to ask you this one question. If somebody is, listening to this and they are able to see themselves in your shoes, but your previous version of you before kind of like opening up from your little seed, what is an advice or maybe takeaway you can give them or a tip to help them emerge?
Mhm. Yeah, so my tip is usually to keep going and
Hmm.
just reminding people that it gets better when you keep going. So keep going down the path. Or the other thing related to that is what I have told people, which I feel like this is to and I'm not sure, and it's easier said than done, and I'm aware of that. Um, but I think that you need to find your joy in some way, find your joy, and do as much of that as possible.
Yeah, I
It's
answered
easier
to
said
that.
than done.
Hmm.
Finding it, I think, is sometimes the hard part for people.
Mm,
But once you figured out what it is, do as much of it as possible. And even if you feel like you have the life where you can't do it, I promise you that you can. Because I was absolutely convinced that I wouldn't be able to volunteer, that I couldn't take on anymore, like all of this kind of stuff. Not the case.
mm,
I've been able to do everything that I want to do, and it keeps me going, even though I'm busier than I've ever been before. Living in that joy keeps me going.
mm. Beautiful. Beautifully said, Jenny. Thank you so much for all the nuggets and the wisdom and, just sharing a piece of you here. I really appreciate you coming in today, and I hope that when somebody listens to this, they will be able to take whatever they need and keep moving along
Yeah.
their path.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
thank you again for encouraging me to do this and being so patient for me to find the time.
Thank you. All right. Bye, Jenny.
Bye.